So this video is to try and teach people how to cast on and knit and then cast off. And really, it's for you knitting club people out there, so you can have this right close up in front of you so you can see just what to do. This is a chenille yarn. When you're picking a yarn for your first project, pick something thick. If you have thick and chunky, it's going to grow quickly and you're going to feel like you're succeeding, and that's really important. Also pick something that's pretty that you want to work with. There's no point having something that you don't like. Pick something that you like, okay? All right, I'm going to make as if I'm starting a scarf, because this yarn makes a fantastic scarf. For a scarf, I'd want it to be about this wide. So on this kind of yarn, that's about 18 to 20 stitches. Thick yarn needs a thick needle. That's what I've got here. However, these are plastic needles and they're not my favourite. Plastic needles and yarn tend to stick and they kind of strain. They don't make a nice click click sound. It's not really my ideal of a nice time for knitting, but there we are. When I cast on, I've got a tail part in my left hand and the ball part, the rest of it in my right hand. I'm going to make a slip knot to start. I'm going to make a short piece of knitting, so I'm going to start with about this much. Watch what I do with my fingers. I secure the tail yarn with my thumb. I go around my fingers to the back. This yarn is going to go through this hole. So here it goes. I'm going to poke it through and then I'm going to pull it. There's my slip knot. Pull the slip knot down. This loop is going to make my first stitch. I hold my right needle under my arm. This means that I've got my hand fully free to work with and I'm not straining my hand or getting tired. So I just stick it on the needle and slide it up. There it goes, that's my first stitch. Whatever I've got left on the tail, that's as many stitches as I can possibly make. So if you need to cast on 100 stitches, you need a lot of yarn on the left. Alright, if you're only casting on 20, you need a short bit of yarn. I'm going to cast on a few. So, to continue to cast on is the same basic movement. This part of the yarn though, watch what I do with it. It's going to go over the needle. The ball yarn here is going to go around the needle, and then this part is going to slide off. Pull it down and snug it up, and that's our stitch number 2. We go over the needle, we go around and off. Stitch number 3. That one's not quite snugged up. There we go, 3. We put the needle and the yarn together, we go around the needle and we go off to make stitch number 4. Pull it snug, not super tight. They want to be able to move up and down the needle nice and freely. This way you don't have any straining. On plastic needles, unfortunately, you're going to get some straining because the yarn always wants to stick to them for some reason. My favourite is steel needles or bamboo, but we got plastic. Okay, now I've cast on, it's time to bring the second needle into play. On the needle, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches. And that's going to be fine for a test, so you can see how I work the stitches and how I turn the knitting as I go. Because I like to have my right hand free, I secure the right needle under my arm. It kind of looks a bit funny, but it means I've got my hand free and it's just very easy. It just means I can be very dexterous and I can turn the knitting quite quickly. So with the needles, you see how they start to taper. Just at that taper point, just before that, that's where I want my starting needle, my starting stitch to be. So I'm going to bring them up to that point there. See that? Okay, when we knit, we stick the right hand needle in through the front of the stitch to the back. The yarn from the ball is going to go around the needle through the middle, and I'm going to put enough tension on it so that the stitch stays on the needle. We're going to slide it around and off, and I'm going to pull it out. This needle pulls out and the stitch gets left behind on the right needle. So again, we stick in through the front to the back. We go around the needle I come off. At the moment where the stitch, right now where I am, the stitch is just about to come off, I let go of the tension on this free yarn. This lets me make a nice loose stitch so that my stitches will fly up and down the needles as I need them. I don't want them tight and I don't want them straining. We go in through the front, we go around, we come over, and at that moment I let go. And we slide off and out. We go in through the front, we go around, we slide off the left needle, let go of the tension, and out. In through the front to the back, around, slide it off, let go, and out. In through the front to the back, go around, oops, I dropped it. All right, around, slide off, I dropped it again. Oh, okay, gotcha. Let go and out. There we go. All right, nice and loose. Swap over the needles. The empty left needle is now going to be my right needle. That's going to receive the knitted stitches. The knitting that we're working with goes from the left to the right every time. Okay, in from the front, around, over, let go of the tension, off and out. In, around, slide over and off, let go of the tension, and out. In, around, over, let go, and out. In, around, let go. See, I'm really not holding it. Once we get to that point, I can let go. And look at how the yarn just moves nice and freely. Nothing's tight. This is supposed to be, knitting's supposed to be a meditative activity. If your stitches are really tight, you're going to get really worked up. I know this from experience. When I first learned, it was tight as anything. I could hardly get them off the needles. But with practice, like anything, we get better. So around, here we go, off, in, around, over, off. In, around, over, off. Boom. Okay. I'll turn it one more time. You can see I've got a variegated yarn here that adds to the interest as I'm knitting. It means I'm not looking at the same thing all the time, and then the finished knitted piece starts to take on some colour variegation as you work. It's all part of the experience of knitting. You're supposed to enjoy the sound of it, the feel of it, and of course the look of it once it's done. And then when it is done, you get to enjoy wearing your unique creation, because your knitting is never going to be exactly the same as somebody else's. Okay, now we're going to pretend, I'll put my needle down. Now we're going to pretend that this little piece of knitting that I've got here is a fully finished great long scarf. So now what we want to do is take that knitting off the needles. And this is what we call casting off. We start just like you were doing a regular knitting line, knitting row. You need 2 stitches on your right hand needle. So we're going to get 1 stitch on, 2 stitches on. Now, what we're going to do is get this back stitch over and off, and it's going to automatically be secured as it comes off, all right? So we're going to pick it up. So you stick your needle in to the back, you grab hold of it, you give just enough tension on this stitch to stop it from coming off as you slide over. You slide it over the end of the needle. You want the one that's left nice and loose, because that's got to do the same thing. So you go in, you go around, you make your knit stitch and it comes off, and then you stick your needle in, you pick it up, and you kind of work it a bit like this to make it nice and loose. Hold on to it, and then off it comes, and you let go of that, so that your one that's left can be nice and loose, because you don't want your last line of knitting to be all tight and squeezed, because that would mean that at the end of your knitting, your finished piece would look kind of squished and short and not the same width as everything else. So we go around, we knit, we pick it up, we work it so it just behaves nicely, just enough tension, and at that point when it's over, I can let go, because what I want is to have the looseness here on the stitch that's left behind, nice and loose. Last stitch, in, around, over, and the last one we pick it up. All right, now I've got one stitch left on. What am I going to do with this? Well, this tail that's left here, we're going to snip. Take it off your needles. Don't need the needles anymore. I've got a loop and I've got a thread. The tail is going to go through that loop. When I put it through the loop and snug it up, you can see. That's it. It's secured. That knitting is not going to unravel. It's not even a mouse-sized scarf, but you get the idea, okay? We cast on, we knit back and forth, and then when we're ready, we cast off, and we get that really tidy edge. Look at that. Nice and tidy. And now, it's over to you. It's your turn.